Mark Hammond is one of the co-owners of Nevada Fine Arts. He is a Reno, Nevada-based photographer specializing in fine art, commercial, and stock imagery. Mark has always harbored a love of the great outdoors. His lens has drawn him to explore the raw landscapes of the western United States. Nevada, California, and Arizona provided the perfect stomping grounds for his landscape and nature fine art photography. Mark's background in computers, digital color printing, the arts, and technology allows him to produce technically high-quality photographs. His commercial work focuses on product, special event, advertising, and professional portrait images. Mark's editorial credits include numerous regional and national publications. His fine art photography hangs in both public and private collections. Mark is well versed in digital formats for all applications, including post-production digital workflow for print and web. His comprehensive online portfolio of fine art images offer a unique and affordable range of subjects. This is a really nice street photograph. Interesting, fun, and why is he there? I think my only complaint is that it is a bit contrasty, and I think the subject could be a bit brighter. Pull up those shadows a bit. I like the drop-off to darken the background in the back. The composition is very appealing. Good shot. This photo makes me want to be there. There are some great form, shape, and relationships of shape that are going on here. Somewhat this critique comes down to taste. I love the highlights around the falls and the curving rock formation that is in the upper left, but I find other parts of the image just too dark. I like the jumble of rock in the lower right, but do not like the out-of-focus log in the very foreground, and not sure the big rock there helps either. I think I would have cropped the log out and left the big rock. It does have nice light on it. This would reduce the vertical panoramic a bit, but still would leave a nice aspect ratio. Part of the too dark is the way the trees go to black. I think it would have been more effective with some detail. Despite that, it is a very nice image. Again, being the metal paper hater, really not, I don't think the metallic helps this image. I am now realizing it is popular in the group. But don't put something in, including paper, that does not add to the image. Be wary of gimmicks. This is a very well executed black and white photo. Has a real traditional feel to it with great tonality and contrast. The subject is interesting and appealing to more than just those that have been there. I just have to point out the exposure is dead on. What detail in the shadows under the bridge. Good job. My only slight nitpick is that the uprights feel very slightly tilted to the right. Maybe an illusion or just me. This is a very nicely executed photo. As the judge, I feel like it is my job to push the photographer and point out some things that may improve the image, although the suggestions may just be my taste and preference. I will start by saying this would be a shot I would be very proud of. The areas that the photographer may look at to improve are, I think the overall tonality of the image is a bit dark. The rocks standing out is effective, but I think this could be maintained if the overall image was brighter. Use of the color channels, lightening the green channel, might bring out the trees as a good counterpoint to the rocks, still darker but more present. I am also not sold on the crop. I like the aspect ratio, but the large area on the right feels distractive. I am also curious about the ratio of the sky to rock, but that may not improve it. Very nice photo. Loch Leven Lakes Trail? Fun processing to give it an abstract feel. My only comment is to look at the image and ask, what does not contribute? In this case, I don't find the sky helpful. You could crop it out or drop it to white. This image had fallen out of its mat, and therefore I could not evaluate it completely. I liked the composition and the progression of the foreground rocks to midground rocks to the mountains in the background. The image is a bit too contrasty with the black showing little detail. The sky is too dark and there are halos around the subject rocks. One sign of overprocessing that I have seen in many of the images in this group is a heavy irregular noise pattern in your midtones. Smooth mid-tone grays and black and whites can be very effective and would be nice in this image. This image has potential. The photographer did a good job of thinking about relationships of the clouds and the mountains, guessing that took some moving around. It is really hard to get a foreground, midground, and background to line up into something spectacular. In this case, it is the foreground that lets this photo down somewhat. I think the solution may be to crop most of it out. There are some nice horizontal lines as it approaches the horizon, and the scrub in the foreground does not help the image. Keep in mind that black and white is all about contrast and tonality. This feels a little heavy-handed, and the black is blocking up, making the pinyon pines a bit less interesting than they could be. It is slightly over-processed, resulting in a distracting noise pattern. This is a very fun photo, but I am sure very hard to capture. Looks like it might have been taken through a second window in very low light. A few thoughts. If you want this shot to rock, you would have to do some planning. Tripod, something to block reflections, maybe even a light source or two. This image is not sharp and that kills it. Sharp would make up for the dark, low contrast. The focus seems to be too far into the scene and it looks like there is some camera shake. If all the technical things were right, then my only other comment would be to get the engine of the toy train in front of the child. I assume it was going around the track. This is a nice image. I think it might be more effective if it was cropped tighter on the pumps and truck. It feels over-processed. There are also some problems with contrast. Maybe to make it look old-timey, the blacks blocking up, which again may make it look old but are generally not desirable. Perhaps it could be improved with better color channel usage. There is overused clarity. See halos around shadows. It might be printed a bit large for the quality of the file. Does not feel sharp, which is really necessary for black and white. I feel like this image is over-processed and the photographer was trying to do too much. HDR effect, metallic paper, high use of clarity, sharpening, etc. The processing has introduced several artifacts into the image, including an overall noise pattern that are distracting. The overall image, squint at it, is low, feels gray. The foreground wall seems to fall in and out of focus, which is distracting. This may be a result of some processing you did. HDR, multiple exposures, and blowing plants or something. I am not sure the metallic paper helps this image. Don't do things that are not making your image better. Does it add to the image or is it a gimmick? The result is that this image is a bit contrasty. I also find the fact that the path is not centered and does not feel intentionally not centered is distracting. I do appreciate that travel shots can be sometimes hard to get from the ideal vantage point. Overall, I think this is a good shot and is representative of the place, although I have never been. When thinking about contrast and sharpness or clarity, think about your subject and where you want the viewer's eye to go. The leading lines are good, but you can use other tools to focus the eye. Something you are doing in your processing, HDR, focus stacking, is causing parts of your image to go out of focus in strange places. Out of focus areas in your foreground can be distracting. This is a lovely image. The focus was very good, including sharp face and hands, but still keeping the depth of field shallow to make the background fall back. A couple of nitpicking things. The blacks of the hair are too dark, and the print seems not quite straight up and down. Many of the lines and even the subject seem to tilt back a bit. You might have been able to apply just a bit of noise reduction to this. I was told presentation was part of the judging, and this could have been presented better. This is a fun shot. Nice composition, interesting subject. The slight optical illusion catches the eye. The shadows are a bit deep and the eyes are black, something editors will reject a photo for, I am told. The overall image could be a bit lighter. Another really great studio shot. As stated before, as a judge, I feel like I am tasked to push the photographer to consider things to get better shots. So these comments are given with this in mind. I think, like in the orange pomander, thought to balance should be considered. The image is weighted to the left. This might be good for an advertising image since it leaves room for text or a logo. I also feel that a bit of light coming from the left, possibly a reflector, might be nice, adding more detail and color to the pine cone and wood. There are a few highlights that are a bit hot, blown out highlights. Perhaps a softer light would help with that. But again, very nice work. This photo for me is a lot about treatment. There is a Photoshop filter of some kind applied to it, but I am not sure it adds to the photo. One negative thing, it makes the rocks that are almost dead center of the image look wrong, and my eye keeps going there. Possibly slightly blown out in the original photo. I think if the photographer likes the effect, then he or she should consider how pronounced the effect should be applied. Generally, if you're going to alter the photo, you want it to be obvious that the photo is intentionally altered. If you only alter it a little, it is hard to tell if it is intentional or a mistake. At first glance, I thought it was not exposed well, but then realized it was a filter. My only last comment is the framing of the photo. I feel the lighthouse being in the center may not be the best place for that. Lighthouses overlook the ocean, and it seems it may be more effective if you gave it some more room on the ocean side. The trees do not add to the image on the right, but the ocean is why the lighthouse is there. Technically, this is a very well done shot. It is harder than it looks to pull off. I know, I have tried. I must commend the photographer for getting the entire flower in tack sharp focus. Good job. I ask myself, what would make this better? This may be a matter of taste or aesthetics, but I am not above using the spot heal tool to take a few pieces of unwanted dirt or discoloration off flower petals. Some may see that as cheating. But that leading petal would look a lot better with a bit of cleanup, and since it is sticking into the view, it dominates. I wonder if a slightly higher camera angle exposing more of the yellow center would improve the shot. I also was wondering if the background was a bit too dark. I too generally drop my background out to dark, but in this case, the color and pattern seem almost complementary to the flower. Just some thoughts. Great color. Very nice studio shot. Well exposed, colorful, and interesting. The subject is different enough that makes you want to look at it. I think the lighting was very well done. Perhaps a small catchlight coming in from the right might have defined the right edge of the metal platform, but this is pretty minor. One thing that I was wondering about was the balance of the pine cone on the left and the slightly off-center of the orange. Just something to think about. The last observation is that the lines of the grains of the wood and the line to the books give a sense of slant to the left. These are all very small things in a very nice image. Again, nice color. This is a wonderfully simple, pleasing image. Nice color, great use of slow shutter speed, and yes, great use of metallic paper. I like the use of negative space and placement of the horizon. Wonderful tonality and a nice contrast of the structure of the pier to the smooth tones of the water and sky. My only small comment, and it would be only as a try it and see if it is an improvement, there are a couple of sharp reflections in the lower left. I would try removing them and see if it is an improvement. Once I noticed them, my eye would gravitate to that, and that is not where you want the viewer's eye. Great photograph. I love astrophotography and appreciate the complexities in getting it right. This is a very well executed photo, and I think the photographer should be proud. The thing that is the challenge with astrophotography is that once you get past all the technical hurdles, you still have to take a good photograph. In my humble opinion, this is a great astrophotograph, but I will focus my comments more on it as a photograph. My main criticism is on the contrast and light. You have two main subjects of the Milky Way and the mountains, and then you have the supporting elements of the trees. Unfortunately, the trees are the brightest and most contrasty thing, so my eye keeps going there. I think there needs to be some balance of brightness that allows the two primary subjects to take center stage. I think the trees are good, and the reflections in the water are a nice touch, but they could be much darker. The only other comment I have is about color temperature. I think the foreground is colored too warm. The rest of the image feels right to me. The Milky Way is great. Just the foreground trees. I think you could do something in Photoshop or Lightroom to cool that light down when you lower the brightness. I think if you nail that, this would be a showstopper. I am going to look at this from two directions: what was trying to happen and what happened. The subject is a nice and colorful cactus, and I can see the desire to capture it. I feel like the composition is good. One thing that might improve it is to put the flower on the intersection of thirds. The shape of the cactus and patterns it makes are very appealing and interesting. The failure of this photo mainly could be the wrong equipment or techniques, and it was printed way too large for the quality of the image. It is hard to get a shot like this. Please keep trying. You usually need a good macro lens, tripod, and patience. Try to remove everything that is distracting, including the little bugs from the flower. Sometimes you do this with the camera angle. Remove distractions, not bugs. These autumn colors are hard to capture in the Reno area. This is not bad, but it is not great. Not to be hard, but there are so many of this kind of shot, it must stand out. This is done by light angle and the supporting foreground, background parts. The subject tree is nice and you captured the color well, slightly backlit. The exposure is good and the print is good, although I may have risked kicking the saturation up a bit. I like the foreground, but might have tried to bring it up in the image by moving closer to it. The background and the tree on the right don't support the image much. I was not there, but possibly moving the camera position a bit might help this image. A slight vignette may also help isolate the beautiful tree more. The trick to these shots is to look at the textures and find contrast and interest in those, making a pleasing patchwork of these textures. This is a fun family photo. I feel like it might have been cropped too heavily, digitally zoomed, and printed too large, just slightly soft. The left part of the photo does not support the shot and is a distraction. This would have been better taken as a portrait orientation. This shot has a lot of fun things going on and I like the composition. I realized this was a candid shot, but it would have been nice if the couple were looking the same way. Don't be shy about asking people to pose. You would be surprised how often they will, especially if you offer to email them the image. I hate to sound like a metal paper hater, but again, I don't see this helping this image. I think this is way oversaturated, making it a bit hard to see for the cool things that are in it. Use saturation, contrast, etc. to support your subject and concept. If everything is saturated, contrasty, and sharp, it is hard to know where to look. Fun capture. The photo is interesting to look at and has a story. I think it could have been printed just a bit lighter and possibly framed a bit more to the left. The right part of the image is not supporting the shot, and I would like to see more of what the couple is looking at. Give your subjects a bit more room and show that amazing canyon. This is a shot that I can imagine would be a personal favorite to remember a great trip. I like the composition and I find it interesting to look at. I think it says, "I was at the Grand Canyon." It also has a great feeling of space and size. The slight panoramic crop is perfect too. The image is slightly over-processed, creating some artifacts that are distracting. This may be from not having a long enough lens and doing some digital zooming or cropping. Regardless, great shot for what it is. This has a nice composition. I like the use of foreground, midground, and background. I think it could be brighter. The whole image feels dark, and that affects its overall appeal. I feel like you could keep the mood of the shot and still increase the brightness and contrast. Watch your sharpening halos. Nice composition. This photo has some great lines that converge in fun ways. I think it leads the eye well. I find the photo a bit flat, perhaps a bit too much emphasis on the sky. If the foreground was brighter, more contrasty, and had a bit more color, this would be a much more effective image. I almost did not mention this, but look at the bush in the front left. Does this add to the image? This is a nice travel shot. I would recommend thinking about the framing of your shot. I am of two minds about the shadows at the bottom. On one side it is a bit of a distraction, but on the other it puts people in that place. This is up to the photographer and the story. The exposure is good and the print job is good. I feel like it might be tipping to the right a bit, horizon lines. I would challenge this photographer to think about strong subjects. This is meaningful to the photographer, but others would probably not find it as interesting. These kind of shots are hard, and I think the photographer did a good job in capturing it. The highlights might be brought down a bit, and a slight vignette could be applied to the image to draw your eye to the dancer and pull the dancer off the background. Keep an eye on your shutter speed. Needs to be high to stop action.